My name is Benedict Carey. I'm a reporter for the New York Times. I've covered mental health for about 15 years, and about 5 years before that for the LA Times. And I've known Elyn Sachs now for 10, 12 years. I've come to most of these symposia just because of my connection to Elyn. She's been extremely helpful to me over the years. Well, we all know Elyn. She's the host and the reason for this conference. She is today in an unlikely pair with Metta World Peace. Here. I just met him. I do feel like I knew him a little bit. I watched him play basketball for many years. I'm sure others here in the room have also. He had an 18-year career in the NBA. Played for the Bulls, the Pacers, the Lakers twice, including part of the 2010 team that won the championship. He was elected to All-Defensive Team in the NBA once or twice. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in 2004 in the NBA. And believe me, there's a lot of competition for that award. He was a great and passionate player. Those of you who watched him remember this, going all the way back to his years at St. John. He went to St. John's University in his hometown of Queens, New York, where he was born and raised. Towards the end of his career, Metta decided to start speaking publicly about his own mental health challenges, his distress, depression and anxiety, mainly. This is a rare thing, I should say. Not many athletes ever come forward with this, even though the athletes are humans like the rest of us. Most recently, Brandon Marshall, who's a football NFL player, did so. Kevin Love has talked about it. But at the time that Metta did, not many other athletes at his level had talked openly about this. In 2011, he won something called the Walter Kennedy Citizenship Award from the NBA, which rewards community service. He founded a school called XL Academy. Now it's called Gradello University in Los Angeles, which is for kids. It's all about education and mental health, kind of put together. He's traveled the country and the world speaking to kids and communities about his own struggles with persistent mental distress. And he also helped Congresswoman Grace Napolitano of California argue for the Mental Health in Schools Act in front of Congress. So it's my pleasure to be here with these two celebrities. Each a celebrity in their different ways. So I'm going to ask them questions about, this panel's called Being Public. I want to ask them questions about what that means for them both and how it's changed their lives. I'm going to put aside the whole question of reducing stigma. That's just repeated over and over again. It's important, the shame and judgment that comes with having a mental health diagnosis, because that is inherent in what they've done. I'm more curious about what it's meant for them personally, right? And what their opinions are now that they've been public for years. I'll start with Elyn and just ask you, how Elyn has, being a public person now, changed your own experience of your diagnosis, of your mental state? Has it had any effect on it?
It's a really good question. It certainly has changed my life. When I decided I wanted to write my book, one of my friends, who's a geriatric psychiatrist, said I should do it under a pseudonym because did I want to become known as, quote, the schizophrenic with the job? And I thought to myself, well, no, that's not how I want to be known, but doing this book under a pseudonym would send the wrong message that this is just too awful to say out loud. The response I got has been almost overwhelmingly positive. People thanking me for giving them hope. A lot of people want me to counsel them about how to get their loved ones to take meds, which if I knew that, I would be the second person with schizophrenia with a Nobel, that kind of thing. I get people writing that they're praying for me, which can't be bad, and people offering other treatments, stand on a table, turn around 3 times and take vitamin E. And I usually say, well, what I'm doing now is working pretty well. Why change a winning horse? There have been some funny responses. There was a guy who wrote an email who said, Professor Sachs, you and the doctors are all wrong. You actually are a space alien, and the medicine is poison. So there have been funny things. There was a person at the law school who was an administrator, she's not there anymore, who basically said, I'm glad I didn't know you had schizophrenia before I started going out to dinner with you. And I said, oh, why? She said, I never would have gone to dinner with you. And I thought, this is a smart and kind and well-meaning person who harbors such negative fantasies about schizophrenia that she wouldn't go to a public restaurant with me. So that kind of really hit me. But I guess the big change is, being more in the public eye. I was riding down an elevator. There was an LA Times article several years ago, full-page article, pictures and stuff, and I'm riding down my elevator in my condo building, and this older man looks at me. He says, there's a picture of someone in the newspaper today who looks exactly like you. I told him it was me. Anyway, you probably have more.
Yeah, how has your life changed, just personally in terms of you've kind of entered a different world here since the playing days, right?
Well, thanks for having me here. It's definitely an honor to be at USC all the time. But the first time I went to a therapist was I was 13 years old. And usually in my household, most of my family members, they go right to an MD. And a lot of my family members are on medication. My dad's functional on medication. My younger brother, he's 30, I'm 39, so he's 35 now. He's still on medication. And he's been on medication since 10. Been in and out of juvenile, delinquent homes, jail, and all that stuff. Then my older brother went to jail for 10 years for drug trafficking, right when I was going to college. My little sister, she's 25, 24, and she's still on medication. She started her medication when she was 13. She actually was in the psych ward for quite some time. My auntie's on medication, and then my other auntie, she's currently still in the psychiatric ward. She's been there for like 30 years. She used to come to our house, and when she would come over, everybody would hide because she would hit, grab a pot, grab a knife, and it was like reckless in the household. So I grew up around lots of mental health issues, and as a kid, it's kind of crazy. Not only are you growing up with that, you got big holes in the wall, rats coming out, and stuff like that. You get used to it, different things like that. It's just not normal for a kid to grow up. Then the dysfunction in the household with the parents fighting and stuff like that, which is not cool to see your dad getting taken away by police. On top of that, then it's like, okay, I got parents who discipline me, but they're very dysfunctional. They're loving, but still so dysfunctional. So it kind of plays with you a little bit. Then you go out into the streets and you start, trying to find a different way. How are you going to be accepted? Some of your friends is doing the right thing, some of them is doing the wrong thing. So I tell this a lot in my stories. I had experiences from playing tag in the streets, playing basketball, baseball, all the way to drugs, learning how to cook drugs at an early age, looking out when the police come at an early age. And then that wasn't for me. That was for like my family members. My family members, they wasn't gangsters in terms of like they wasn't going to go out and shoot anyone. We did have lots of guns, but it was only to protect us. But they were only selling drugs. So I didn't grow up like around gangsters like that, but with the exception of going outside. When you experience all those things, it's like, okay, you're in this hurricane. There's like so much going on. And how do you get out of it? So pardon me, that was my cough drop. Not a tooth. Well, I hope it wasn't. But, but basketball was an outlet for me. And I was trying to get out of that situation where I was. I fell in love with math. I fell in love with math because I had to figure out a way to not be in the streets smoking marijuana with my friends and doing all that other stuff. So I used to go outside and do math problems. It was the only thing that could keep me focused because if I go home, There's really nothing to do in my household. So I would go outside and do math. And that's when I became a math major in college. My first major was architecture, and my second major was math. But then I dropped that for basketball. I said I need some money, so I had to figure it out. But yeah, that's like kind of a brief little background.
So you were pretty well familiar with this kind of world before you started being public, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And luckily, my mom opened me up to seeing a therapist when I was 13, a counselor, actually, or a social worker. And I was grateful for it because now I knew that I could always go back. I could always go back to something. I had like 20 therapists since, and I have the same one now that I had for 10 years now.
Oh, that's great. Okay. And Elyn, let me ask you then, how does it change how people have treated you? I guess you answered that a little bit in the first one. How people treat you now that you're out.
Been very generous and very kind. I may just be very delusional. Well, people have treated me very nicely and very kindly, and I then went on to add, I may be utterly delusional, and everybody may be against me, but I just don't see it. So that's probably a better place to be in than the reverse. But as I said earlier, I think most people have been very, very kind and very supportive.
What about you, Metta? What about now that you're speaking out and stuff? What's the response? It's going to be mostly good, but
it's been good. When I first started in NBA, I was 19. I'm 39, like I said. I never wanted people to know I was seeing a psychologist. It was just like, if I go public and tell people I'm seeing a psychologist, everybody's gonna call me crazy, and it's just too much pressure. So I was acting out a lot. Knew I needed help. Then I started to go out and drink, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna make things better. I'm just gonna get drunk. We called it getting bent. I'm just gonna get bent with my friends, smoke some marijuana. I don't know how I never got caught for smoking marijuana. All my other friends did.
But it's legal now, so you're good.
It's legal now, but and I just thought that would make things better. You smoke, you drink, and you just go to sleep, but it made things worse. It just multiplied the depression and anxiety. And then so in Chicago, my general manager came to me and said, "Listen, we want you here, but you're acting out too much. We cannot have this. We really want you here. We want to pay you the max dollar." And one day I would say, okay, I'll change. The next day I'm breaking stuff, fighting and doing things. They had to ship me out. And I was getting in so much trouble early in my career, And then finally I started to say, okay, I got to get comfortable with myself. I got to be comfortable that it's okay to see a therapist. And then I started to speak out in the championship. I thanked my psychologist on national TV, and then got the Citizenship Award the next year.
So that was the 2010 year you're talking about.
Yeah.
When did you start speaking publicly about this? Were you still in the league then?
I started speaking publicly about mental health and my issues. I was throwing signals out there a lot. I was always throwing signals and just hoping somebody understand where I'm from, because when everybody's talking about you got to be professional. I am not professional at this age. I'm from the streets. I know nothing about being professional. And I'm hoping somebody could understand, but they don't really understand that. Right. And then at the same time, I'm in this profession where they telling me I'm going to be great, I'm going to be this. I want to do everything everybody else is doing. I want to do the commercials like Tim Duncan. I want to do all that stuff. But then, I don't really get those opportunities because my personality. So I'm reaching out. And then when I felt like nobody was really reaching back, mainly the corporate world, when I feel like they wasn't really reaching back, I just said, I got to be really comfortable with myself. I actually had 2 years where I was really depressed, and I went through, breakdown. I had a nervous breakdown, which nobody knew about. Nobody knew about the nervous breakdown. But I definitely had it. My family knew about it because it was not nice in my household. It was very stressful in my household, and it was stressful in practices.
All right. I want to ask another kind of question to you both, which is speaking out always a good thing? Seems like it is. If you're a celebrity, you're a successful person, you come out, you tell people about your own mental health mental distress. Seems like what can be bad about that? But I wonder if you've thought about it, Elyn, whether there are any downsides to that.
Mostly it's good. I actually was giving a talk to first-year medical students at USC a year or two ago, and this young man in the first row said, "Professor Sachs, you talk about how you sometimes have symptoms still. Is there anything that sort of reliably tips you over?" And I said, "Well, actually, the evening after a day when I present." And he goes, "Oh, no, no." I said, "No, not today, not today." But so.
What about you? You had any sort of downsides to this? New life as a spokesman for people with mental... Yeah.
Downsides meaning like backlash or...
Yeah,
negativity.
backlash, any embarrassing or bad situations.
Just ignorant people sometimes can be like, "You think you're a psychologist? That's so dumb. Like, why would you do that?" Yeah, people just... I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, I'm improving myself. But I never really... I didn't care what people said. And then when I changed my name to World Peace, they were like, "Metta's crazy. Ron Tesla's crazy. Change his name to World Peace." I'm like, this world is crazy. Like, well, how bad is that? Changing your name to World Peace. Like, hey, you do something positive, people saying it's crazy. And I'm just like,
Well, people of a certain age will remember Lloyd Free, who became World Be Free.
Yeah.
Remember him? Yeah, another basketball player. Let's see. Let me ask you both another question, kind of along those lines. It's about pharma money and whether it matters whether you're sponsored by pharma companies. Whether you've thought about it and.
I mean, originally, you want to be diagnosed the right way. So, I've seen people that wasn't diagnosed the right way because some doctors was just being lazy, quite honestly. Take the time, have patience, and diagnose your clients the right way. So with that being said, yeah, you do have some kind of pushback towards the pharma companies. Not every pharma founder is a bad person, Not every pharma founder is only trying to look out for themselves and trying to make the big dollar. Some pharma, founders are trying to provide solutions that are customized, for your diagnosis, So I'm not opposed to working with pharma companies.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. For me, my mental illness relies for its efficacy on me both being in therapy, intensive therapy, and on medication. It's made a huge difference to me. I used to try to get off of it all the time, and once I stayed on it consistently, my life got much better. But still, if I'm invited by a pharma company to give a talk, I will only do it if it's about a drug that I have nothing to do with. I don't want to feel like I'm, being a spokesperson for a medication and that kind of thing. I feel kind of funny about doing that. But I feel like talking to drug company audiences, the reps and stuff like that, where I tell my story and what's helped me and that kind of thing, sort of give a window into the mind of someone suffering with psychosis, is socially useful. I think it probably helps those people understand what this experience is like. But it's a complicated question. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I've never taken drug money to support my institute, say.
Right. I have another question. It's got to do with. I mean, you two are, famous in your own way, each of you, and that helps you. It helps you in that you have the means and the connections and the support to get the best help. So you can get any psychologist you want. You can pay for it. You can have 5 psychologists a day if you want. So what do you tell, young people who they have no kind of access like you have?
Yeah, that's so important. I'm glad you asked the question. When I was 25, I was in Sacramento, and I wanted to do YouTube counseling sessions where we bring 12 kids that's in the system, talk about their issues with a psychologist, but then we had to change that to a social worker because I guess the rules and all this stuff. So it couldn't be a therapist. And I just wanted to give people access to different issues so they can relate to something, not just my problems. All these kids is going through something different. I was thinking about that. I had a marriage counselor, which I paid $85,000 for the year. We just needed something to work. And then I had anger management, and I had parenting counseling, because I was just all messed up. And I thought about that. I'm like, well, I can pay for this. And I started to feel better. And my marriage counseling actually worked. It was the marriage counseling that really changed my life. It helped me with my anger. So yeah, I can pay for that, but then how is another kid gonna pay for that?
Yeah.
Right? So it's solutions out there. You know, we just gotta give a little bit more effort. We gotta push the other companies that's making tons and tons of money, from pharma to tech, whatever, to give back to the youth. You know, we gotta push more people to become counselors. There's a great program at the Chicago school. They charge $15 for sessions, and they use their students to give sessions.
Psychotherapy sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of solutions out there.
Yeah, no, I think this is an important problem. I'll sometimes be giving a talk, and someone in the audience will say, you see your doctor 5 days a week. I can afford to see my patient once every 3 months for 15 minutes. How on earth are they supposed to do as well as you? And I'm like, you're totally right. You're totally right. I've had so many resources. I've had so many opportunities, and I feel some kind of survivor guilt in a way. Not that I'm going to stop treatment or anything like that. And it's a real problem. I mean, I have a friend of mine who's actually in the audience today who's a psychiatrist at one of the county clinics, and she has 350 patients. How on earth, do you do that? I mean, I think partly training people to be peers could be really helpful and less costly than a fully trained professional. And in a way, we were talking about peers earlier today. No one really understands as well what an illness feels like better than someone else who has it. I've had cancer too. It's true in cancer. It's true in mental health. So that's another way that we may be able to give people resources and services without sort of breaking the bank. But we need to spend more money. I mean, actually, I've done a high-functioning schizophrenia study that one of the main collaborators is Steve Martyr at UCLA. We've got 2 MDs, 2 JDs, a PhD candidate, full-time students, CEOs or not-for-profits. And one day I asked him, Steve, how many people with schizophrenia do you think are high-functioning in our sense, professional, managerial, et cetera? He says, I don't know, Elyn. The real question is how many could be if we devoted proper resources. And I think that's the right answer.
All right, that's great. I don't know how much time we have left. I think a lot of you came to see Elyn and to see Metta. It may be time for questions. Chris, what do we got left there? 15 minutes, good. Yeah, let's have some questions. Anybody?
Hi, I'm Rachel Chambers, the Chief Operating Officer of Painted Brain. My question is for Metta World Peace. I'm also on the board of the Drew League Foundation, and Dino says you're an amazing player and active. And I wanted to know what strategies you think would be effective. I'm a program developer, and African Americans in South LA are definitely our focus in education. How do you think that other NBA, and we work with the NBA, a lot of players, how do you think that the NBA, the NCAA, and other celebrities can work, particularly in communities of color, to partner with academics like myself and people doing the work to really, be effective in educating, particularly young Black men on mental health? Because I'm an 80s baby, and when you came out with your mental health issues and advocate, it impacted my generation. But I feel like the younger kids are, there's no more Metta World Pieces, so.
I think it's hard to catch them when they 13, 14, 15, they got their mind made up usually. Then they get in trouble, then they change when they get out of jail. You got to catch them when they're young. I know a lot of guys in my community, they just don't want to change. And you look at Chicago, gang violence is a religion. It's just like the Bible. They abide by the code, just like the Bible. And they abide by all the rules. And it's embedded in them. So how do you change that? You got to catch them when they're early, educate the parents, more educational, events and different things like that. I don't think it's one. I don't think it's one solution, but involving more people. This is great for me to come here because I try to do a lot of things, but without speaking with people like yourself, and then I guess you're going to go back and do something about what we're talking about, you know? So inviting more, reaching out more. Because athletes love to do this, quite honestly. And especially if you can give back and then, somehow work together. Because look at all the charitable foundations the athletes have. Everybody's separate. They don't, and trying to give back.
Yeah, that's another problem.
So just if you could reach out more, and see if we can work together.
Well, we'd love to work with you at the foundation.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to have a few more. Try to keep them tight. Go ahead.
I used to work with the NFLPA, but I grew up with you, and I've been around you a lot as a kid. When you were talking about sending out signals, I feel like I was receiving them. You always pop up whenever I'm having nonprofit events this is going to be really emotional, but my mom passed from breast cancer 11 years ago. And you were there when I got my passport to go. I had to be the forefront for everybody. I was Defensive Player of the Year for soccer and basketball in 2004, but I was 32 back then. You were outside of my event, and I've been writing narratives about what it was like to grow up in LA and, being around Kobe, and Elyn was my mentor, but how can people like us who decided to go behind the scenes and were neighbors to people like you, because I lived in Inglewood in New York and I went to USC, there's a lot of talk about single moms and what they do for their families, or moms in general. And given, black men are targeted just as much as black women, how do we support not only what you guys are doing in the NBA after your careers and during your careers? You're talking about the Bible and living by the code in Chicago and all those different places. For people that don't know what that's like, what media, what tools do you use? What films do you think are helpful for them now?
Yeah, the programming is very important. So when I was coming out with my issue, I try to keep it short also. When I was coming out, I was trying to do programming, that focus on mental health, whether it was sports content, whether it was my life, whatever the case may be. But it's really hard to get that done. And then later I seen a lot of programming on TV that involved mental health, but the programming is very important. Whether it's on TV, whether it's in schools, whether it's through basketball. They used to have church leagues. Maybe you have a mental health league, whereas maybe the pharma companies can support sports, something like that. Just more programming where you can talk about these issues. I think that would help.
Yeah, and for the woman that was asking, LeBron James owns a company called Uninterrupted, and Baron Davis has Slick. There's a lot of folks that are doing stuff now that they've retired or have the resources. So sometimes the Players Association isn't the right way, but everyone's really willing to help. So I'm here, Ron is here, but USC is here for everybody. So I'm just really excited. And thank you for what you guys have all done.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Michelle. I'm actually from Loyola Marymount University. I'm the Director of Health and Fitness. We're trying to combine the two together to help the students out, especially at that age. Being that this talk is about being public on your disabilities and stuff like that, and this speaks to both of you guys, I'm working with students and I'm working with people in general that are having a hard time being public about what's going on because of family. And you guys have now come out and you have talked about your aunt having the issues that you're having and stuff like that. I apologize, Elyn, I don't know your background story as much, but how does that impact your family and how does that impact what you do because of that?
It's a really good question. My husband, we've been together since '95, is an incredibly good support. I have really good friends, Steve, Esther, Lisa, other people in town, My family of origin is kind of interesting because I'm very close to them. I speak to them on the phone pretty much every day, but I do not talk to them about my mental health challenges. So when they read my book, they knew I had broken down at Yale because they were called, but their fantasy was I'd never had another episode for the next 20 years, and I had many. And when they read my book, they were really hurt that I didn't tell them about that. And what I told them is, when I first started having breakdowns, I had already been living independently for 4 or 5 years, and I did not want to go back to being the kid in my family of origin. And also my parents worry a lot, and they're not very good at supportive. So it wasn't good for me for them to know. And again, I'm really sad that that hurts them, but I still think that's the right mistake. That said, there seems to be a lot of evidence that if you suffer from a mental health challenge and you have close people in your life, family or friends, by your side, really helping you, you have a much better chance at doing well. So.
And your program is, can you?
We do health and fitness at LMU where we're actually working on bridging the gap between student psychological services and students who are not quite ready to go there, but we're trying to help them on a health basis.
And health, physical and mental?
Yeah, so I'm in charge of their group fitness program, their nutrition program, their
nice.
sleep program, different things like that to kind of
think
do a
that's
holistic
great.
way.
That's terrific.
I think it's great that you're using the fitness, sports, to I guess find your target audience for lack of better terms.
Well, we work with that way because there's also a stigma behind going to therapy. So we're trying to get the kids when they're like not ready to quite go to therapy, but they know they need help.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I'm doing something similar with basketball.
Oh, nice.
Originally, I was trying to find solutions for kids, whether it was parenting counseling solutions, depression, whatever the case may be. But I found out that doing it through sports and let the sports be the bait, you're going to get kids that need help. Mm-hmm. Make a connection with the parents, and I think that's great. I'm yet to see it work, at scale, but we're working on it now, and I would love to find out more about it.
I would love that. And then also going back to my original question, how was it going public with your family? How was that? Was it impacted your family at all by going public about it?
I'm sure they didn't want to be in the spotlight. I was the first family member in the spotlight, and when I talk about my dad and mom had issues, and I'm sure it hurts their heart. But I have to let it out. So they understood it, and I think it made them feel better also.
Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. Why don't you take the next one? He's been waiting. You've been waiting. Yeah.
Okay, sure. I got two pretty easy questions. I was wondering if you had any thoughts about Dennis Rodman when he went to North Korea, and then if you have any thoughts on why it's so hard for our politicians and militaries to actually bring world peace and end the wars.
Yeah, that's a great question. I love Dennis Rodman. He's I idolized him for a long time. When I'm a kid on TV, when I'm a kid watching him, I'm like, I'm going through everything this guy is going through. I love this guy, And I always wanted to reach out to him when I was a kid, and anytime he went through something, it hurt me. When I first met him, I gave him a big hug. He don't know why I gave him a hug. I just loved him. And he went on Oprah one time and talked about, I think he was molested as a child, and parents wasn't in his life. You see this guy with a dress on and makeup, and I wasn't going to go that far. But, you see a guy's reaching out. Somebody help this man, And then, he was public with his drugs and all this stuff. And then you see him go to North Korea. Sounds crazy, but how crazy is that? He's trying to, do something. And people's like, Dennis Rodman's crazy. Now, I'm a fan of Dennis, like I just said. I don't like how he put everyone on the spot. He was a little bit tipsy when they was on CNN. And you bring all these other basketball players with you. You're tipsy, just talking, and all the other basketball players is trying to get off the camera. They're trying to hide. They ain't got nowhere to go. Kenny Anderson, Charles Smith. So that was that's the only problem I had with the whole thing. Don't go on camera, drunk. But I get it, and he's continuing to go back, and that's his legacy. That's huge. And you see Trump and Kim trying to get it together, whatever the case may be. But I thought it was great. I would have done something like that if I had the opportunity.
We'll take one more, huh?
Hi, y'all. I really want to say that I really appreciate, Metta, what you've done over the years. I grew up in LA, and I'm from Crenshaw. So I knew a lot of people that what you did made that kind of a difference, to be around people to say, look, I went through therapy, I went through anger management, because I was there, I saw all that stuff that you did, and I will never forget it, because it changed my life, and it made you a role model for me. And that made the difference in my life, to say, you know what, it's good to speak up and say something. And even after have been an advocate for over 30 years, it means so much to see the change when you see people, when they look at you and they go, you're not just the basketball player who's famous, who everybody knows your name, it's like you did something, and I can do that, and I can go do that thing, and it won't destroy me. It won't make me a bad person if I go out and do that. And so that's a big deal for me to have seen that. And also for me as a recreation therapist, I really appreciate that you do it in sports, that you relate everything in a sports way, and it makes it that much easier, more accessible to other people to do that. And so that means a lot to me. And I like to see, maybe we could connect or something about how to use that. Even that you're older, a lot of people still know you. You haven't gone away. You know, you're not like invisible anymore. You're still a famous guy, right?
You're ancient. That's
People know who you are. So I think you can still use your name to make a difference in this world about how to bring all that back, about how important it is.
Well, I've been trying to do things. So one of the things that I've been doing in my neighborhood back in Queens, I always go back to the communities in the city, in my hood, and always. And now I'm in LA. I don't go back much, but I started to work with kids on my basketball team. So I coach kids from the city, and I be in the Drew League. We're in Venice Beach. We go to Fresno and play basketball. One of my kids, like every other week, he has an ankle bracelet on. He can't leave the house. But he's trying to get in trade tech. He's a really good point guard, about 25 years old, and we're trying to get him in school. I got him working social media now, for $15 an hour. And we got a lot of my kids that I coach, because I did coach the G League, but I don't only coach top professional athletes. I like to coach basketball and life. Yeah. So I've been my last game that we had at the JBL right here at Trade Tech. This league's been around for 20 years. My team is just crazy. There's like 12 me's on the team. All right? And I'm coaching these guys. We in the locker room. They're arguing with each other, ready to fight. And, we get through all that. I give them a little speech. And then we have text messages throughout the week. Everybody's on group chat. And we're like, what are y'all doing this week? Who's trying to get in school? And then we give certain people tasks for the teams. So we try to run our team like a professional team. Who's doing social media? Who's doing PR? Who's posting? Everybody have a job. And it's like, that's not going to change their life economically, but it's giving them something, different, to be a part of. And also, they love basketball. So get in, the sports business. Maybe you could be an agent, a physical therapist, a trainer, a sports psychologist, And so that's why I like sports. And you don't have to play sports to work with us. We got people who don't play sports, and they help us. And we try to, interns, so to speak. Yeah. We try to help them out, also. But I can do it through sports because that's what I've been around for, for my whole life. Yeah. And I try to infuse sports with, mental health. And then also with education. There's a lot of opportunities in tech, obviously. Tech is like a big bubble and a big word, whatever the case may be. But it's a huge opportunity in your career choices. So we try to at least identify what we can that we can pair a kid up with.
You're doing rec therapy. You don't even realize it.
Where's Chris? We got one more? Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you for your work. And I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I was a speech therapist, and I put myself through school coaching swimming, so I wasn't a real athlete. And I thought, geez, the things I'm learning in therapy really work with athletes. So I went from weekend athletes to professional athletes to the NFL and Olympics, and then I got a call from a guy named Jerry West. And he invited me down, and this is a long time ago. And he wanted me to work with Gary Vitti, the trainer at the time, and that didn't work because I couldn't really do therapy with an athlete via someone else. I have two questions that I'm dying to know. The reason I started on focusing with athletes is because I didn't know I had ADD at the time. So I have a two-part question. Do you identify any of your athletes, your kids that have attention deficit disorder? And how much do you think the world inside professional sports has changed since the mid-'80s till now?
So I'll give you an example of the kids I coach. I coach from teenagers to 45-year-olds. Mm-hmm. So I don't really put an age limit on who I'm coaching. So one of my kids will come to the game and live out his car. And it's like, okay, yeah, obviously I can take care of this guy, you can move with me, but I can't keep doing that for everyone. Mm-hmm. So what type of advice do I give this kid? He's homeless and he's playing basketball. He's trying to figure out. Actually, I had 3 kids that lived out their car. 2 was brothers. They lived out the same car. And then one of my kids, like I said, this one kid, he lives in Compton, and he's always in trouble. He's been in and out of jail. His dad did like 20 years in jail. You know, and I try to just keep everything in perspective and try to keep their mind focused. One of my kids that lived out his car last year, I don't know if he's living out his car this year. I coached him every summer, and he almost got into a fight. And I was just trying to say, like, listen, you came this far. You know, we got the social media stuff happening now in basketball. You're trying to get a job. Do you want to fight this guy? The other guy he was going to fight, I know this guy, and he's a loose cannon on the other team. You know, I'm like, if you fight this guy, it can escalate quick. You know, and then he kind of relaxed. I put him back in the game, and the referee said, don't put him back in the game because they're going to fight. I said, listen, he's going back in the game. Don't fight. Like, you know, and that's how I try to approach. You know,
it doesn't matter if they have other mental health issues. You don't like diagnose or have somebody there that could refer them on to different things?
Sometimes I don't. Sometimes, you know, I got some NBA players that I can't disclose names, but I, not counsel, I forget the word, mentor.
Okay.
You know, but I don't give advice because I'm not a social worker. I'm actually trying to become a social worker so I can give more advice, actually. Yeah. But obviously I can't because it's illegal to do that without that paper. I don't want to go to jail.
And the second part of my question, how much has sports psychology changed at the level that you were working from 80s to 90s looking at these issues?
I love sports psychology because I play sports. Most of my stuff came on the court. Most of my issues happen on the court.
Yeah.
You know, and that's my career. So, you know, whether you're a math teacher, maybe you need math psychology. Maybe you're bringing so much stress from your household or your past to your job. And for me, I found it with sports. So I just said, okay, I got to focus on sports psychology and actually help my outside life.
Great.
All right. Hey, thank you, everyone. Thanks to Elyn and Metta World Peace.
Can I ask Elyn a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to rush you. I'm going to ask Elyn a question. Sorry. Can I ask Elyn 1 second, just like real quick? What was you? I was gonna ask you. What was you diagnosed with? I just didn't get that, and I was wondering schizophrenia. And have you seen Beautiful Mind? Yeah. I love that movie. I cried over that movie. I'm a big boy, but I cry over movies.
All right, go ahead.
And with Elyn as a witness, can I get you to come visit Fountain House?
Oh,
we've been working to get you there. I know, we've been working to get you there.
Okay.
I hate to do this to you, but
Sure.
we'd really love you to
I'll
come to Fountain House.
Yeah.
Is that a promise?
It's a promise. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.